Thank you for joining me for this November 2024 Rune reading. I will just share my screen with you. Just a moment. Here we are. So, to come to the first rune on the left, and I view them all equally, although the rune on the right does talk about progress going forwards, but in every other way, I view them equally. We have Is or Isa on the left, which means ice. It's cold, it's heavy. I always use the analogy of the glacier carving its way through the mountain to make the valley. It's something that we would like to have more control over. It's something that usually brings a certain amount of chaos. Obviously not if it is uninhabited land that is involved, but the changes that come about because of it are not necessarily the ones that we would choose. And I think that is a very good representation of the way the bigger powers in our world are operating, or in some cases not operating or not doing very well in our world at the moment. And we can all see that. We can see it in the Middle East, we can see it in Ukraine, we can see it in Sudan, and so many other places. We can also see that picture in many Western lands where we would say, how are we heading in a direction that we want to go in? And yet this, is this the best we can do would be another question that would arise. Also, in relation to this rune, whilst it can be very beautiful about things that are being created over a period of time, for example, a child that is growing in the womb is something beautiful. We cannot hurry it. It just takes the time that it takes, the 9 months from start to finish. And that is the positive side of ease. Stability is the positive side of ease. But here we have it's kind of like you're hanging on, you're hanging on for dear life, adhering to systems, to situations, to ways of handling them that are not going well, and yet unwilling to let go, unwilling to let in the beauty that Fair or Fairhu, sitting in the centre of this reading, could offer. And that, of course, is a transformation process. Fair or Fairhu speaks of talents, abilities, wealth, what we have at our disposal, everything we have at our disposal, and the creative ways that we could find to use that. And when Fairhu falls upside down as it has here, the meaning is very simple. Those capacities are not being made the most of. Although, of course, to really flourish, there would have to be an overcoming of opposition imposed by Isa, ice, by the powers that be. Because we also here, when we're talking about Fair or Fairhu, and really making the most of talents, wealth, and abilities. And wealth is not just about money, it's everything we have at our disposal that can be put to positive use. We know that when we're talking about that, anything new carries an element of risk. And I suppose we are not quite at the stage where enough are saying that the risk of something new outweighs the risk of carrying on as we are. Although I know that many individuals that I speak to certainly feel that we are at that stage. If it was enough people, enough of a force to be reckoned with, then something would change. Something new would open out. And as I come to the rune on the right, hour, which means year, and yera, which means good harvest, when we are feeling downhearted about the way things are going, and it does not seem to me at the moment that November will be much of an improvement, or perhaps any improvement on October, although I do feel that November will bring more that makes people sit up and take notice, and thereby creating demands for something different in a way that has to be listened to. Now, here I'm not talking about the British political situation. I've covered that in its own separate reading. And neither am I really talking about the US election, which I do not think will be smooth. And that's my impression of it. And I also mentioned that in my October reading. But when Fair or Fairhu is in this position, will also be a lot of people that feel they cannot use their talents and abilities, often in the everyday way. And we know that, of course, in war-torn countries, the talents and abilities that people would like to use in their everyday lives, it's often not possible to use them because of all the upheavals or other things that have to happen. But this also applies to Western lands, where more people are feeling that there is a shortfall of wealth. They don't have the ability or the capacity, or perhaps the means of seeming deserving enough to have the wealth that the minimum level of wealth that is necessary for them to flourish in the community and the society in which they live. So this speaks of the, I'm going to say, anguish of such people, but also of how, when this reaches a certain stage, with Fair or Fairhu, there will always be a demand to turn things around. And when I come to our, there is indeed a promise that this is what is being worked towards. It does depend on what individuals and, more importantly, groups, nations and collectives decide. But it does point in the direction of there being a big push for harvesting something different, which is very, very encouraging. For harvesting, for producing and harvesting changes that bring greater contentment to more people, the seeds of those beginning and growing and developing in a way that can be clearly seen and acknowledged any time between the 1st of November 2024 and the 31st of October 2025, which is indeed encouraging. And I want to leave this reading on an encouraging note, because we all need that, not least because it helps us to become more of who we could be when we believe in possibilities. And something that I have come across in the last few days is the attraction that many people are feeling towards the colour magenta. I came across this myself recently when I discovered these beautiful rose agate stones, crystals, in a shop in Malmo, Sweden. And they just stood out to me. They were like beacons. And I couldn't leave that store without buying some. And immediately they took me to thoughts of the eighth chakra, the soul star chakra, and the colours within them of the deep magenta, purple, silvery tones, bluish purple, all within these lovely, lovely stones. I don't know if you can see them, see the different tones on the screen. There's even a beautiful swirly pattern in this one here. And to me, that is a very encouraging sign that more people are aspiring towards this colour. I talked to the lady in the crystal shop about how I was feeling, and she said she had actually had people asking before they obtained these stones, what do they have in the magenta colour? Because they are attracted, they want something magenta at the moment. And to me, that is very interesting because that chakra is the one that exists outside of the physical body. There are others that, of course, do that. It is above the head. And it connects us to our soul or our spirit. It connects us to that part of ourselves that is part of all that is, but also to the potential of our own pathway, the higher potential of our own pathways. And if more are driven intuitively or subconsciously towards this, and I believe that seeking this colour is an emblem of that, then we are finding that more people are working towards, are aspiring towards, are beginning to connect with ideas and thoughts and feelings that are higher, that are better, that are part of evolution. And we are all part of evolution, as indeed is Mother Earth. And I'm just going to stop the share now. And as we take on these thoughts and we think about Mother Earth, we may like to have a little meditation. And I invite you to join me, just to sit in the silence and to focus on this beautiful colour and to ask the question, how would it be to feel inspired with my highest and my best potential? And I'm going to be silent for around 30 seconds. Thank you for joining me. I do complete these room readings every month. Sometimes I will complete a reading on a different theme as an addition, as I did with the UK political situation. I also offer meditations. There are some meditations that I have on YouTube that I invite you to take a look at. And for the 8 points of the pagan wheel of the year, I also complete readings that I do not normally record on video, although I sometimes do. Mostly I just post them on Facebook. And I call these inspirations at the moment because we all need inspiration for these times that we are living in. So do take a look if you are interested. Thank you for joining me.